Welcome to the most well-educated audience in Brussels. Hello, and we are going to have a very, very short meeting today compared to the number of people that will take the floor to explore a topic that everybody wants to know something about, and many people have been continuously researching on without necessarily finding the last word, right? Just to give you an example of some things that we've seen at CEPS over the past couple of years, as we work, for example, very much on the transatlantic relationships and on the Trade and Technology Council between the EU and the US. We saw, I think in December 2022, so 1 month after ChatGPT was released, a joint publication, a joint report of the Council of Economic Advisors in the US and the some of the experts in the European Commission that basically was saying, I think we have to sort of reinvent and rediscuss our understanding of what kind of tasks and jobs will be augmenting, will be taken over by AI, and where AI will actually augment individuals going forward because of generative AI, because of the emergence of powerful large language models and so on and so forth. So all the very, very thick body of literature that we had seen in the 2 decades probably before, all of a sudden looked obsolete. So it is a difficult topic, right? A difficult topic to tackle and a difficult topic to invest your research life on, because you know that what you will be doing might change over time. And one of the latest reports that we saw coming in particular out of the ILO in Geneva and GPI, the Global Partnership on AI, started looking into what tasks will be augmented or replaced by AI, where AI will be an augmenting factor or replacing factor for humans. And they basically end up saying that 80% of those are a big unknown, between 2 extremes, where we are fairly certain that some tasks will be will see the augmentation of humans, so a complementary approach between humans and machines, and others AI will be able to take over going forward. So it's actually in this big unknown that we want to dive now. And we had already, this week has been quite intense. On Monday we had a book talk that for the first time looked at the potential of human creativity when writing books and using generative AI systems in various roles. And it was a very interesting conversation. Today we listened to the presentation of the Jobs Barometer from PwC. Then some of our researchers that I will call on stage after the keynote presentation will offer their views, and we hope that this will be intellectually rewarding for you, and it will complement you and augment you for the remaining hour. I will now call on stage Sarah Brown. She is thought leadership expert at PwC. And I will give you the floor for you to address the audience. You can do this sitting or standing. You are perfectly free to do however you want.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. So good afternoon. A big question for all of us: how will AI affect jobs, the skills that people need to get those jobs, the wages that people get paid, and how productive those workers are? So to try to find some answers, we analyzed 500 million job ads from 15 countries to try to uncover how AI is affecting jobs. So we decided to look at job ads because they are a leading indicator of how the jobs market is changing and give us that early picture of the change radiating through the jobs market. You'll see we looked at mostly developed countries, partly because that's where we could get the most solid data, but also these tend to be the markets where AI is having the biggest impact and making the biggest inroads. So in that sense, they are just the right places for an initial study. So what's happening with AI jobs? So we define AI jobs as jobs that require at least one specialist AI skill, so machine learning, large language model design, that sort of thing. And here is what we find. These jobs are good to look at as an indicator of how AI is permeating through the economy, through countries, and through sectors. And what we find is some pretty dramatic growth. So the number of all jobs has doubled since 2012, whereas AI specialist jobs have seen 7x growth. So even taking into account that dip toward the end, which our economics team says is due to an unwinding of AI jobs toward the end of the pandemic. And it's also interesting to note here in 2016, so that disjuncture starts. So AI specialist jobs start to take off as early as 2016, which is really interesting. So long before ChatGPT exploded into the headlines, AI was having quite an impact. So turning to sectors, where is AI penetrating so much as you would expect into those white-collar sectors, those knowledge worker sectors? So the three sectors where AI jobs are making the biggest inroads are information and communication, professional services, and financial services. So the wage premium is interesting for folks who have these AI specialist skills. We did a like-for-like comparison of jobs for, say, a financial analyst that don't call for AI specialist skills compared to jobs for a financial analyst that do call for those AI specialist skills. And on average, there was up to a 25% wage premium for those folks who do have those specialized skills. So it's an interesting indication of how valuable these skills are and how much companies want to get them and think they will contribute. Turning to countries, so we can see that the countries with the fastest penetration of AI jobs, the fastest uptake of AI, Singapore is literally off the chart, followed by Denmark in second place and the US in third. And it's interesting to see that gold, silver, and bronze position is exactly the same as the gold, silver, and bronze position in the IMF's AI Preparedness Index. So that index looks at how ready countries are to make the most of AI on measures like digital infrastructure, digital skills, data availability and governance, having the innovation ecosystem of academics and businesses and funders who can all come together with government and policymakers and help to drive that ecosystem forward. So the message here for policymakers is that the IMF seems to be onto something, our data suggests, and could have a very interesting roadmap. And it could be a good indicator for policymakers who would like their territory to benefit from AI. So what does that mean for the economy? Well, I've got some good news here. We don't always hear good news out there, so it's nice to have some good news in here. And there are two main pieces of good news for the economy. So first is that sectors that are more exposed to AI are having almost 5 times higher labor productivity growth. So what does exposed to AI mean? There's an established academic measure of exposure to AI, and all it really means in layman's terms is that AI can readily be used for some tasks in that sector or that occupation. So a financial analyst, a software coder, a customer service agent, all of these have high AI exposure because AI can quite readily be used for some tasks. Some jobs with low AI exposure might be a masseur, a construction worker, a machine operator, a dam builder, for example. So when we look at sectors that have high AI exposure, here are the usual suspects. We've got financial services, IT, and professional services, so all those knowledge worker sectors, as contrasted with sectors that have low exposure, so construction, manufacturing, retail, transport. And what we see is that those high exposure sectors on the right have almost 5 times higher labor productivity in the last few years based on OECD labor productivity statistics. So we cannot prove causation here. There could be confounding factors. I'm sure we could debate that, but it's an intriguing pattern, and it suggests that AI may be contributing to labor productivity. And that certainly jibes with what we're seeing with clients in that they're finding AI useful and it makes their folks more productive. So good news for economies. Certainly many developed nations are stuck in quite sluggish labor productivity growth, and this data suggests that AI could be one way to help break economies out of that, which is important for prosperity and to maintain tax bases and public services and for a myriad of reasons. So some nice good news. Here is more good news. AI is helping to ease labor shortages. So here we look at occupations. On the right, we have occupations that are more exposed to AI. On the left, occupations that are less exposed. And the growth in job numbers is 27% lower in those occupations more exposed. So I should be very clear, jobs are still growing. So this is not a jobs apocalypse story. This is a story of gentler growth, which can help to ease pressures on labor forces. It is good news for countries and economies that are facing shrinking working age populations, and those problems may get worse as populations age, as birth rates in some cases are falling below replacement level. This could be good news that there will be gentler or could be gentler growth in jobs. So finally, what does that mean for workers? Let's get personal. So from the economy level, macro level, down to the personal level. What does this mean for me? What does it mean for you and for our kids? So it means that to stay relevant in AI-exposed occupations, we need to adapt and we need to build new skills. So on this chart, as usual, we have occupations more exposed to AI on the right and less exposed on the left. And we can see that net skill change is 25% higher in more exposed occupations. What does that mean? Well, it means when you look at job ads and you look at the skills that employers are looking for in job ads, skills are changing 25% faster in those more exposed occupations. That means that old skills are disappearing from job ads and new skills are appearing in job ads 25% faster. So workers need to adapt. And that fits with what we found in our global CEO survey, which is 69% of CEOs think AI will require new skills from their workforce. So this is a story of change, it's a story of adaptation, but it's also a story of great hope. So to sum up, there is no going back to yesterday's jobs market, but our data suggests that workers who adapt and who learn to harness AI can be more productive and more valuable than ever before. And it's a good story for economies as well. Our data suggests that AI may be able to make people more productive, and it may be able to help ease labor shortages. So in sum, we expect AI to be like electricity or like the internal combustion engine, and it certainly did, or certainly will, displace some roles, but it will create many more, and it will empower people to do things we couldn't do before, help us work smarter, faster, and better. So it's a positive story, and I hope those are useful findings for you.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Please come keep me company here. So I'm going to call some of our, the panelists on stage who will provide the first reaction. So I'll call Max Ube, who's head of unit for future work and youth employment at DG Employment, who will provide a first reaction to your presentation. David Timmis, from Generation, Global Communications and Public Affairs Management. Hey, David, thanks for being with us. And last but not least, our Lara Nurski, who's our head of future work program at CEPS, recently joined us, and we are super happy to have Lara with us. I remember once that Lara came and we met here in this room, but then you were not at CEPS yet, and then I was thinking, we need to hire this person, and so we managed to to have her with us, and she now leads our future work program. So I'll start the round of comments from Max. You have a microphone there, so and please. go ahead and take the floor for
Yeah.
more or less 5 minutes of comments. We will have then the possibility after this first round to gather comments also from the floor. But please go ahead. Thanks for being with us.
Yeah, thanks for inviting, actually not me, but one of my big bosses who had to...
Check if it's on.
Is it on? Can you hear me?
Yeah, now.
Okay, maybe I just have to put it closer. No, I said thanks for the invitation to this event here. And I added that in the first place, I was not invited, but one of my big bosses, but who had to cancel very last minute, so I didn't even have the time to look into the study. So thanks very much, Sarah, for the presentation. And that seems to be very interesting also for the work in the European Commission. As you've heard, I'm heading a unit called Future of Work, and we cover, amongst others, artificial intelligence and algorithmic management at work. And many of you will know in what kind of cycle we are, or in what phase of the famous 5-year cycles of the European Union. So a new mandate of the Commission, and the European Parliament is ahead of us with lots of ideas. And for us, the moment to reflect on issues like artificial intelligence and the impact on the world of work in our case, to be prepared for our new political leaders coming in very soon. So all kind of research is very important for us, because we always strive to make propose policy initiatives based on sound evidence. That is key. I think there's no doubt that artificial intelligence will have, or does already have, a major impact on the world of work. I will not repeat all the opportunities it brings for both for workers and for companies, but obviously there are also challenges. We sometimes distinguish a bit between the quantitative challenges and the qualitative ones. If you think of quantitative and the number of jobs impacted, of course, skills are one of the answers, not the only answer. So here again, your research comes very timely. Skills indeed are needed. People need to reskill, to upskill. Many of you will be aware that the Commission put a lot of focus on skills in recent times. There was a European Year of Skills, many initiatives very high on the agenda. That is also linked to an issue that you had also on one of your slides, the labor market shortages. Very high on the agenda of the employers in particular, and I'm looking at Maxime Girotti, who also joined us here. He knows very well the strong calls of employers to do more to ease labor shortages. AI can play a role in easing, but at least within the team, we had quite some discussions in how far it helps and in which kind of numbers. So there is conflicting data also on this topic. Maybe something we could look into during the debate. In terms of skills, what is clearly needed is what we call transversal skills that complement tech. So technology is not able to deliver all the skills that are needed. So there are human skills that are, at least for the moment, not replaceable. If you think of creativity, of working in teams, of critical thinking, also social intelligence, these are clearly skills that will be needed in the future to complement technology. You also referred to the more qualitative challenges. This is maybe not so much the topic for today, but clearly there are challenges if you think of AI leading to sometimes excessive surveillance of people, of discrimination and bias, of pressure on people working under these systems, etc., and how to safeguard rights also in the digital work, to have at the one time, an enabling framework that allows companies and workers to make use of all the opportunities of artificial intelligence. That is, of course, one aspect of our reflections, but at the same time also the more protecting side, so that people should have also the rights that are needed, including possibly collective rights. Last few words, there's also a lot happening at the international level, so national, obviously European, but international as well. We are just preparing also for G7 discussions on the topic. And again, the future will show what the new political leadership will ask the European Commission and more specifically DG Employment to do on that. I can assure you that if we are asked to do something, the skills dimension will be a very important element of the overall initiative or package. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Max. We'll get back to you later. Certainly there will be questions, and Sarah will have the possibility to react to what you have said. You pointed a number of very important aspects that deserve also in the elaboration of the European Commission a constant update, right? So even a little bit of a moment of rethinking and reconsideration like the one that we are about to, the transition that we are about to face will lead certainly to new priorities and perhaps new directions in the debate. So maybe I will ask you later whether you have a sense of, you can talk about upskilling and reskilling, but towards what is the knowledge and the vision of the Commission as to what are these types of skills and how deep they go into the education system, and how far back, and let's say into the early days of education they potentially go. Maybe we'll have time to discuss that later. I will just turn to David now. David, you should have a microphone within reach somewhere. No, you don't. I'm going to pass you this. There's like 2,000 microphones here. Like, there's so please switch it on, and perhaps you can react and also tell us a little bit about generation, because
sure,
so that the audience is aware.
Thank you very much again for the invitation. It was very kind of you to give me the chance to present a bit generation to the audience. So I represent in Brussels NGO, a global NGO that maybe many of you haven't heard of. Generation is active in 17 countries on 5 continents, and its mission is to support the economic mobility of vulnerable people. So we help people, because vulnerable is obviously a very broad definition, we help people that are coming from minority backgrounds, women with dependents, young people who, even if they're fairly well educated, and there's many examples in Europe like this, who still struggle to find a job and live with their parents. So we like to say we help people that for some reason or the other society has left behind. And before I comment on the survey and on the results, and thank you again for presenting, I wanted to give you a teaser on our own research at Generation that we're doing now, and the public results will be probably shared in autumn. And we've asked our vulnerable target audience, graduates, how to use AI tools. We've asked 600 of them out of our 115,000, so it's a very small scale, so take it with a pinch of salt. But we were very pleasantly surprised and relieved to hear that close to 90% of our vulnerable category is using AI tools, both men and women, and across the different countries where we operate in. So this is great news. Less great was the fact that even though we help young people and mid-career and older people alike, primarily young people are using these tools. So there's definitely more work to be done with mid-career and older workers to help them gain the AI skills they need. And maybe what was more, I'm not even sure to say if it's worrying, and this is maybe where it complements a bit with your results, is that I think it's 80%, if I remember correctly, of our graduates are using these tools at home, unbeknownst to their employer, in some cases using unsanctioned tools. Salesforce also has done a similar survey, and I think 70% of the respondents also said something similar, that yes, they're using AI tools, yes, they see increases of performance, they use it for research, for coding, and other purposes. But these are not tools approved by their employers, which is a big issue. And to kind of sum up my sort of summary of the survey, the other finding we pinpointed is that the mid-career and older workers we saw that are not maybe reskilled enough, they're very open to it. But this goes back to the idea they're open, and others as well, but I think there's more work to be done from employers, both in the corporate sector, public sector, and NGO alike, to actually provide the right skilling opportunities for their workers, because they want to learn, and they're kind of doing it by themselves, but in, as I said, unsanctioned tools and in ways that maybe the employers would not really agree with. And then maybe one comment on the survey, which I found interesting, because indeed you spoke a lot about the productivity gains, which I also see, and we see it in our graduates. At an individual case, they improve their work. But maybe what's, for me, a question that remains is, yes, you increase the productivity, and yes, people benefit from these tools, but again, the primarily beneficiaries are people working in specific jobs and sectors, and there's quite a lot that are left behind, not just mid-career and older workers, but what I didn't mention from our studies, that 90% I mentioned of we love AI tools, it's mostly people we place in the tech sector. So again, how do we make sure that people working in the green economy and healthcare are using these tools, as you rightly said, to augment their work? Because a doctor nowadays who uses AI tool for diagnosis maybe, or for summarizing admin work, can be very powerful, but most doctors don't get these trainings, at least not yet. And if they do, it's a very particular case. So I think more work has to be done on reskilling. And as a really last mention, because I do want to hear from everybody and from you, and this is a message I share all the time, there will not be a shortage of jobs, but a shortage of skilled workers. And I strongly believe in the fact that we need to do, all of us, more, both to learn ourselves, but also to ask our employers, governments to do more on the reskilling front. Because we don't know what jobs will be created or will disappear, but we do know what skills will be relevant. Human skills, emotional intelligence, creativity, still very relevant, critical thinking, together with AI skills. But how do we prepare people quickly enough for this AI transformation? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, David. We'll certainly get back to this, and also the relationship between complementary skills and more sectoral skills, the impact on the workforce, right? There's been for a long time a debate on the so-called emptying of the middle class, the need for more good jobs, and so on and so forth. In Europe, perhaps we've seen a slightly different dynamics than the one in the US. And perhaps we haven't done the full job as of now on the complementary skills. If you see so much concentration in the tech sector, for example, of the answers that you get from the people that you're in touch with, right? So this idea of moving across sectors or building more complementary skills or more general purpose skills or using emotional intelligence and so on and so forth seems to be a pretty far into the future in terms of how we approach the reform in our education system and even the path towards reskilling people or upskilling people going forward. Laura, I give you the floor for a few comments, and then we will give you, Sarah, the possibility to react to this first round of comments.
Great. Thank you. I'm very happy to comment on this report. And Sarah, congratulations on a very interesting report, and thank you for sharing it with us today. It was a pleasure to read. It's very comprehensible and highlighting some key insights for workplaces and labor markets, and a few things stood out to me that I would like to discuss with you today. So firstly, you illustrated how the swift uptake of AI by organizations is already driving this demand for specialist AI skills, and has been since 2016, and especially in 3 sectors that are driving this. You highlighted the ICT sector, professional services, and financial services. And in your report, you show that these 3 sectors have 3 things in common. They have high labor productivity growth. They have a high share of vacancies that demand specialist AI skills, and they are more exposed to AI, according to this measure that you showed us. And indeed, it's an accepted methodology for calculating AI exposures, and it's based on the tasks and activities that are present in such a sector, and whether those tasks and activities are especially suited for the current applications of AI that we have today. And like you acknowledged, both in your presentation and in the report as well, that these correlations do not necessarily indicate a causation. But one hypothesis you hinted to is that the order of causation runs from AI exposure. So these are sectors that have AI-suitable tasks. That leads to AI adoption and hiring, and then to productivity growth. And if that were true, a conclusion could be that we need to support AI adoption in those sectors that are especially suited to it to drive productivity growth. But we could think of another chain of causation that I wanted to bring into this panel. in which AI exposure is not exogenous but endogenous. Meaning that the AI applications that we currently have today are not by accident especially suitable for ICT, finance, or professional services, but intentionally so by design. And there's a few channels through which this could happen. For example, the fact that ChatGPT is such a good coder is because it's developed by coders, and a lot of the training data is coding data coming from GitHub, public GitHub repositories or Stack Overflow websites. So, or another channel through which it could be is that maybe the financial sector is directing capital and investment towards AI applications that are especially suitable for their sector. So there's a few channels through which AI exposure could be endogenous. And if that were the case, the implication of what we should do could be different, because maybe maybe we are missing some opportunities in other sectors for which we are not developing these AI applications and that are actually maybe lagging in productivity growth. Maybe some sectors that could benefit from systems of applications of AI systems that have not been developed yet. Maybe could be sectors with high labor shortages, high turnover, maybe high burnout rates or bad working conditions, or maybe some public services that are also highly knowledge intensive, such as education and healthcare. Maybe they could also benefit from AI the most. And the same goes for those exposed occupations, basically. The vacancies in those non-exposed occupations on the left side of your graph, they're still growing in the double digits, right? So maybe we want to ease labor shortages actually also on the left side of the graph and look into AI applications development for those occupations. So basically this story boils down to, shouldn't we direct AI development maybe towards those sectors that are lagging in productivity growth? And then the second thought that I had noted down, and that has already arisen in almost every one of the panelists that I'm very happy about, was this concept of complementary skills. Max, you highlighted this, and other panelists as well. And you didn't show it in the slides, but it's actually, it has a place in the report, where you show that the fastest growing skill categories are skills that cannot be performed by AI or current AI applications. They include, on the one hand, recreation and personal services like yoga, sports instructors, childcare, skincare treatments, things like that. And on the other hand, maybe some skills that you could label as green skills, like in energy, environmental preservation, restoration, utility. And indeed, so these might be skills that are safe from automation at the moment or future-proof in that sense. But they are not what I consider AI complementary skills. So what I consider complementary skills are skills that you need alongside AI skills, or to work with AI, or to implement. Yeah, to make the most of it. So to implement it, to use it ethically and productively in the workplace. So it could be lots of different ones, and I feel like it's worth a discussion to have in the coming years. What are those complementary skills? Is it domain knowledge, for example, so that the worker can still check the correctness of the AI's output? Is it critical thinking, to reflect critically on the implications of the decisions that AI is making? Is it AI literacy, so that workers understand how AI works? Is it data security, so that workers know what data to feed into the AI and what not? Is it change management and communication, so that workers can be involved early on? So I hope that in the coming years, as we move ahead, and with the upcoming decade of skills ahead of us, that policymakers and social partners and educational institutions will focus on these AI complementary skills, so that we can figure out what they are, how they can be acquired, so that the future of work can stay human. And then I just want to conclude by thanking you and saying that I look forward to future updates of the report as well.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Laura. There's a couple of things that we can park now, and maybe I'll get back to you later on them. And one is, indeed, maybe we can reach agreement. We don't have much time, but in half an hour, start building a little bit of a frontier for complementary skills and for the skills that the Commission might want to take as reference in the future. We have a data space for skills, actually, that has been built inside the European Commission that should help to improve the matching of demand and supply in the future, right? Across the territory of the European Union, there's many things there. And the other thing where I will prompt you, you have not mentioned, but I know you do a lot of research on this, is what does this mean as we start moving the conversation towards a more forward-looking and prescriptive aspects for job design? Right, so how should jobs and vacancies of the future even be designed in a way that will make the most of the AI revolution and at the same time preserve what's unique of the human intelligence and human agency, because of some of the skills that you were mentioning and the competences that you were mentioning before are actually for us to be able to make the most of AI by keeping the level of situational awareness that is needed in a context in which AI gives you answers, right? And you don't know exactly, you might not be able entirely to control where's the source, what's the process, and whether this is affecting critically your ability to take an individual decision. But before we enter into this conversation that I tried to push you to be gradually more prescriptive, I go back to Sarah, because you've heard 3 panelists and a very talkative moderator, so now you have the chance to react.
Sure. I mean, it's a bit wide-ranging and fantastic points. So I'll just pick one or two headlines. Is a really nice observation made that we won't have a shortage of workers, but we'll have a shortage of skills, and the skills required by the jobs market will continue to evolve at lightning speed as there are more technological breakthroughs. So how can we help people to adjust rapidly enough? And is skills first hiring, for example, just one way to create greater agility in the jobs market? So in brief, that means not hiring people based on their past job experience or their degrees, because things are changing so quickly that almost by definition, there might be few people who have the right skills as technology changes so quickly. So instead, can we hire people based on the skills that they have? I know, Andre, we had a brief chat over lunch as well about it is almost inevitable that there will be a mix of jobs that are displaced and jobs that are augmented and created. That is certainly going to happen. Both sides of that coin are going to be a reality. But whether that is a positive process that uplifts many people is in our hands. And I know that you pointed that out, Andrea. It's based on decisions that policymakers make to support and enable and retrain people who are displaced, but also on the positive side to encourage the use of AI, to enable it, to create the infrastructure and the innovation ecosystems so we can make the most of AI, so that it can flower as a technology, so that new industries and new roles can be created as fast as possible.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sarah. I will now move to the audience. Can I get a sense of the temperature of the room, not the actual temperature, but if you could signal, who has a question or would like to make a comment? Okay, we already have 3, so I will say let's collect this 3. Do we have? Okay, you got more. We got all the microphones. So there was a comment back there. There is, and then we come to you. So we'll collect these 3 comments. Yes, please introduce yourself, of course, and then ask your question or provide your comment.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon to all of you. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Maxime Ceruti. I'm Social Affairs Director in Business Europe, and nice to see you, Max. I mean, it's timely, as was indicated, because, of course, we are now at a time of reflection for the next steps. And also on our side in Business Europe, we are looking into this issue with high interest. And I just want to flag that it was very welcome what Sarah has shown on the potential this has for labor market outcomes. Productivity being really the core of what we need to improve in Europe in the next years to make sure that there will be the basis for prosperity, but also for improvement of working conditions in Europe. And of course, it is also connected to the capacity of employers to offer trainings to their people. But one of the key points we are making these days in response to the recent publication of the EU Action Plan on Labour and Skill Shortages is that we need incentives for employers to provide skills training to their workforce. And there will be debates in the coming months and years on the next set of structural funds, but having in mind the particular role of ESF Plus in this area, what we are calling for is to have a 50% earmarking of resources of ESF to skills, and within the overall 15% going to employers to improve the skilling of their workforce. And of course, this connects to AI. It's broader, but it is also connected to AI. And it is connected to our ambition to participate in efforts to reach the 60% targets of adults participating in training every year, where we are today at around 37%. Employers play a key role in providing training to their workforce. They need to be supported, particularly SMEs. There is also, of course, all the discussion on how to adapt the technology to the workplace. It was mentioned as an issue, how to use AI technology. And of course, it's important that there is good technology that is validated by employers. But on the other hand, of course, it is an ongoing process, and it needs to be done by the employers at their rhythm. So we will have to see in the next months what are the trends. But it's a very promising agenda. Thank you.
Well, don't sit down. Don't sit down. Can I bounce back?
Please go ahead.
I know we are very unconventional here, so,
Yeah,
so let's enter into a
be open.
conversation. And then see also if you want to intervene immediately, maybe you let me know. I have a couple of observations on what you're saying, or questions for you. So I don't know if you want to swap places, but the first is, do you think at Business Europe you know what skills, what should be the subject of the training for the reskilling and the upskilling? That's the first question that I have. I don't know, maybe you have other questions. We all go sit in the back and we bring Maxime here for 10 minutes. And the second thing is there a problem of mismatch in terms of you retraining workers, but especially in those sectors that have a high turnover and churn rate, right, where workers might change job quickly. So you make investments into making workers more, let's say, tailored to the type of tasks that they should perform at your workplace, but then you run the risk of them switching jobs and perhaps carrying this fantastic training to another employer. Are these two problems that you see at the moment, that you face? See if there are more questions for you. Okay, this never happened. That's just for you, so that you feel privileged.
I appreciate that.
If we're asking questions to the audience, I would like to add one. It's actually quite related to the question, do employers know which skills they're going to need? Then my question is, do they know first which tasks are going to change? Because a skill is the ability to perform a task well. So what kind of use cases are they looking for? Like, is it applications in marketing, HR, operations, or like new AI products, or reimagining processes? Like, what exactly, what use cases are they looking for in order to determine what kind of skills they need?
Just to make it clear, because otherwise we scare audiences away for future events. This has never happened before, so we're just doing it because we know you're a knowledgeable guy, and the fact that we have a representative of the employers there. Maybe Max will at some point ask you a question as well, but please, and thank you for answering. You are free also not to.
Thank you very much for this opportunity to an open exchange. Also, just being here, I think it makes sense and appreciated. The first question on which skills, I think the answer will be varied, meaning that it is not going to be the same in all sectors and occupations. So there will be a need to really look into, on the granular level, what are the trends for different sectors and occupations. What is quite clear is that we are always speaking about the technology introduction and what it can bring into the existing tasks. So the interplay between the green and the digital transition will be crucial as well, because it can help achieving the green transition. And on the other hand, I think we will have a strong focus going forward on how to make the best of human potential that cannot be done by AI. And so differentiating what is human skills and what can be better done through AI, I think is also very important in the debates to come. But I think the mobility of what you were speaking, there will be competition. And I think these very desired skills are, of course, high in demand already. You can see a difference between the IT sector, where it is very present and where they are designing the technology and spreading it, and it's part of the offer. And there, of course, they are more at the forefront of the evolution, but then the use of it across the economy will be crucial, and so it's important to look at it across sectors. But I mean, this mobility is positive if it is contained to a certain extent. It is a market, so it's market dynamics. But on the other hand, one way we think is useful to consider is the role of apprenticeships. So we have a very well-structured provision of apprenticeships in Europe. It is essentially targeted to young people, and there is potential in broadening access to apprenticeships to adults. But it is also around looking into the role of higher education institutions to provide better opportunities for adults, which are therefore different to initial training offer that is from academic institutions. So there is a lot of different actions potential, but overall, I think we'll see a big change, and this big change is already happening, but it's going to scale up.
All right, thank you very much. This is great that we have an additional panelist that we just hired at the last minute. It's just sort of like platform work, right? Thank you, Maxime. There was a question there at in the back, and I know there is a question here as well. So
thank you.
Don't be scared. We might not necessarily ask you questions.
Hopefully. Filippo Romano from the European Digital SME Alliance. Recently, there has been an open call about collaboration between academia and enterprise. So do you believe that for the upskilling and reskilling of workers, the higher education institutes and the VET programs moving towards micro-credentials could be a good move to bridge this skills gap?
Micro-credentials?
Yes.
Okay, okay. Very good. I collect the question here because then we don't bounce back immediately, but and then I will give the possibility to all the panelists to reply. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Now we heard the
Could I ask you to introduce
the employers?
Yeah,
I will
okay,
speak,
okay.
Yeah, from the trade unions. My name is Dorte Andersen. I represent the Danish trade unions in EU questions, and of course, I'm always listening to your second panelist here, Maxime. But in fact, I looked a little bit on the title of this seminar, the workforce transformed, and I think that's really what this is about. It's a transformation, and I must say, also a little bit intrigued when I hear that it's the speed that we will have to adopt is incredible. You were talking about faster and better and quicker. And we, from the trade unions, especially in Denmark, I also saw on your slide that we are second to Singapore. We embraced IA completely. It's good and it's necessary. But my question is more linked to, again, this transformation and the speed, what is happening there, and the working conditions. Max mentioned it a little bit. Are there some risks here concerning health and safety, maybe discrimination, gender issues, maybe? It's not that we are denying it, not at all. We embrace it, but I think there is some issues here that we also have to look into, and I wonder if you have been doing it, because then I would be very curious. So, but thank you so much.
All right. So, okay, we've had 3 comments. We bounced back with 3 questions, so we are okay. But now I have the possibility of listening. Perhaps we go from David, then Sarah, and then Laura and Max. Okay.
Sure, and apologies, I'll make a few mentions because indeed there were quite a few interesting comments and I was trying to captivate everything. But to start with the last point, so outside of my work at Generation, I'm also a consultant working with many, primarily multinationals, to help them better communicate about the AI transformation to their employees. And you'll wonder, why would they ask me, somebody who doesn't have a software engineering degree, to do it? Is because the main issue I see in companies, primarily the large ones, but I'm sure it's similar in smaller and medium-sized enterprises, that the pressure they have as for-profit entities to implement the tools is so high that they sometimes forget you still need people to implement these tools. So I see these companies sort of contracting me to speak with their employees to a bit ease the fears and tell them that, okay, your employer is caring enough to have this discussion now, but I often see the case that the company implements a tool that the employees won't use because of the resistance to change, and then nobody wins at the end of the day. So that's definitely an issue. And the point that Max made, and you reiterated the idea that AI can create jobs, but it's down to us to make sure it creates good jobs. I see enough cases of AI being implemented maybe mindlessly, of taking the task of somebody's job that they actually love. So if the employer doesn't consult their employees, its employees, of how do we use these tools, and maybe even co-designing the tool if it's an internal tool, the employer risks, making the job, I will exaggerate a bit, but miserable for the employee if it takes the tasks that they actually love. And now to go back a bit to the point that was made earlier, the idea, what we do at Generation since this AI revolution is that historically we've been training people on always the technical skill for the sector we prepared them for, be it healthcare, green economy, or tech sector. These are the main industries we place people in. But we always train them in behavioral and mindset skills. And since the AI revolution that is upon us, we started implementing, we're now piloting in a few countries, AI curriculum for everybody. Regardless if you're a nurse or a solar panel installer, we want you to have the basics. What do I mean by basics? And again, this is not yet fully implemented across the world by Generation, but we're piloting it. It's mainly prompt engineering. Some people say it's a new role. I, as somebody in the space, think it's not a role, it's a skill. How do you use these tools is by asking better questions. As a tech optimist, what will that help us do? Hopefully helping us ask better questions to each other in real life. So this is what we're trying to do at Generation. I think all organizations will have to, and I know it's not easy because of resistance to change, because of lack of budgets, they will need to teach people the basics. I would call it the AI ABCs, and that's what we will probably all have to know to some degree.
Thank you, David. Indeed, there was in the pre-generative AI, or let's say, commercially available generative AI era, there were attempts, in this space. I remember the Elements of AI course. They came out from Finland and then was translated in all the languages of the European Union. It was given the basic elements. Of course, it's difficult to use such an online course and transform it into something that you really make your own on the workplace, but it could be useful. And I think we'll probably have to experiment with those. And so it's great that you're doing it with those courses and see what works and what makes an impact going forward. Sarah, your turn.
So there were comments around increasing skills training and the potential value of micro-credentials. And our view on that is that anything that increases the agility with which people can learn and adapt is a good thing. And PwC's Global Workforce Survey is hot off the press and out this week, and it shows that people want to learn. So happily, more than 70% of global workers think that AI could increase the quality of their work, increase the creativity of their work, and increase their efficiency at work. So we have a willing audience of people who want to learn to harness these tools, and let's help them. Let's make it easy for them to learn to use these things. There were some comments as well around the risks of rapid change to the job market. And of course, the IMF, of course, has for example, looked at the differential impacts of change in the job market on women and men and high-paid and low-paid people. In the next version of the AI Jobs Barometer, our ambition is to look at the social equity impacts. So where is AI complementing and enabling and augmenting and creating roles, and for whom? And where is it displacing, and what are the demographic groups that are affected by that? Because clearly that's a major issue.
Thank you very much, Sarah. A couple of comments on my end on this and something that you said. First of all, agility, right, is very important. The debate on agile management and agile governance sometimes to me is a little bit puzzling. And for example, I coordinate a course on agile governance every year. It's actually next week in Florence. So collecting all the state-of-the-art knowledge in this field, because there's a lot of emphasis on learning to learn. Which is the ability of preserving the ingenuity and the curiosity, right, to take on new tasks, because we become progressively more rigid and path-dependent because of the type of work that we do throughout our lives. But at the same time, I see a lot of emphasis on the ability to unlearn in agile governance. So the fact that you actually zero out and start from scratch. So which one is or maybe both are needed, meaning, well, perhaps they are two faces of the same coin. The second thing I wanted to say is the potential discrimination and potential impacts differentiated per groups. We will see how this works out, but in principle, at least from a legislative perspective in Europe, we have placed all the applications of AI on the workplace in the high-risk category of the AI Act. Now, this means that whenever a well-shaped version of the conformity assessment for the systems will be available, certainly the trustworthiness of this AI system will have to be subject to ex-ante assessment and then periodic monitoring, which incorporates mostly the assessment of the impacts on fundamental rights and safety. And of course, the robustness of the AI system and everything that goes under the label trustworthy AI. I hope that in the future, since this will mean a different thing for applications on the workplace, like algorithmic management is an area where Max and his team do a lot of work, and for an autonomous vehicle. I mean, these are completely different use cases. So hopefully we will be able to develop more granular guidance on what does it mean to control for impacts that might be otherwise discriminatory on the workplace, and how do you use AI systems in a way that does not create disproportionate impacts on specific categories as opposed to others. So just to add a little bit to the conversation, Laura, I get to you for your feedback.
Wow, so much that I noted down. First of all, to respond to the agility question, I also think that agility is very much a feature of organizations and not just of people. And that goes for the learning and unlearning as well. So I think organizations' agility depends on their structure, their culture, and that also shapes how agile people become who work in those structures. So just focusing on teaching people to be agile, I don't think it's enough. I think we have to help organizations be agile as well. And in that sense, that links to what Maxime requested to earmark half of the budget of the ESF Plus for skills. Then maybe we should earmark the other half of the budget to help SMEs safely experiment with new operational models and how to apply AI, because skills go hand in hand with tasks. So we have to figure out first how processes and tasks ought to be changed. On the micro-credentials, indeed, as an agile way of learning new skills, that's a bit of the how. How do we learn? But we shouldn't forget about the what should we learn, and also who has this access to learning. If these micro-credentials are offered online, maybe they will only enforce the training gap and exacerbate the digital divide. Maybe there's this well-known training gap that people who are already highly educated get most access to training and get most training from their employers as well. So we need to be careful that this doesn't worsen. And then the final thing to the lady from the Danish trade union, actually, I have a paper coming out next week where I, among other things, list some different risks from AI in the workplace. And I conceptually distinguished 3 types. So the first is automation, AI used for task automation. This is the first thing that people usually think about, that is changing, how many tasks are available to people. So the quantity of jobs, and then also who has those jobs or those tasks that will be lost or will be gained. So a composition effect and a quantity effect. But then there's the applications of AI, not in the production, but in the management. Now we call it algorithmic management, and there's, in my view, 2 different sub aspects. Operational management, which means using AI to coordinate tasks across people in terms of planning, for example, algorithmic scheduling and planning, algorithmic work instructions, things like that. And those sort of applications will have more of a qualitative impact. There's a risk for increased work intensity or reduced autonomy, skill losses. Might have also an impact in how people collaborate in the workplace. So there, the risk is not so much on how many jobs will be left, but what's the quality of those jobs. And the final application that I see a lot is in the management function is AI in human resources management. So applications of AI in recruitment, selection, evaluation, promotion, termination, and there indeed the risk is mostly on discrimination. If these or that the algorithms learn the discriminatory methods of the people who generated the training data. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Max. We already exhausted the EU budget. What else could we do?
That's
only the European Social Fund. Sorry.
50%. No, it's not exhausted, but still.
Both halves, actually.
Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Maxime pleaded 50% and now they're complemented with the other 50. So.
Very good. No, I will report that back to the colleagues dealing with the funds and with skills in particular. No, on the risk, I think I mentioned quite a few risks, and they came up here again. Now there is the issue of surveillance, excessive surveillance of workers. So we heard again about a lack of transparency, the opacity of the system. We have not touched so much about data rights now and privacy. This is, of course, in this new world also key. Information consultation rights, the whole OSH dimension. I think that's all clear. That's why our vision is to build a fair and a safe digital environment, because we also believe that without that, adoption of AI will be tricky also for companies if there is no workers buy-in into that. That's why I fully agree with all those who said we have to support transitions. We have to support, again, both companies and workers in this difficult transition. Again, I took note of the calls for using EU funds. Maybe one aspect here, and of course I know that Maxime represents Business Europe, so the bigger ones, there's of course a major challenge for the SMEs, the small enterprises, to keep up with the pace. And there is a risk now that you will have not only a digital divide between generations and people or regions within Europe, but also between the bigger ones, the bigger companies, and the smaller ones. Yesterday I met by coincidence a delegation from the crafts, and if you address these issues and know how do you prepare, what do you do, there is silence. So that is really a bit worrying. On that, I heard or hear again and again from colleagues that are in charge that there are interesting projects in this area, transnational ones that is called AI for VET and VET for AI, where they try to build VET centers of excellence for a skilled workforce, in particular with AI in the back of their mind. And on the AI Act that was mentioned, I think briefly at least, I will not go into details here, but maybe just the comment that the AI Act from our perspective covers more, the level of AI developer and maybe the user company, but not so much, the level using company and the affected worker. So there we are in touch with also colleagues in DG Connect to identify possible gaps, etc. But in our view, not everything is covered or dealt with sufficiently by the AI Act. Thanks.
Thanks a lot, Max. We have a few minutes left. I don't know if there's anybody else who has a comment or a question. There is one, and we cut it off here so that we save on time. So you'll be the privileged one to ask a question.
Florian Cortez from the European Policy Center. So my question regards the link between AI and robotics, and how quickly you think that will come about, and then will it affect also other types of jobs beyond knowledge sectors and blue-collar jobs, and will that bring more challenges? So that's one. Second question concerns job displacement by international trade was not always well managed by governments. So how can we be optimistic that governments will be agile and good enough to manage displacement by AI? And might there be need for new sources of revenue to manage this transition if it comes speedier and less smooth than we are considering it? Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. I can see whether someone wants to take the questions. It has to be very concise. Also, one of your questions brings us a little bit away from the path of this event, but we can definitely keep it forward bilaterally. David, you want to say something about this?
Just on the first question, because I'm particularly interested in the topic, and I'm sharing this sort of without any generation or any other hat, just as a tech enthusiast. From my perspective, and there's research behind it actually, when it comes to robotics, we too often nowadays speak about humanoid robots because of what we see on whatever, social media or mass media, but realistically speaking, we have industrial robots which are being adopted both in the US and China primarily, and increasingly so in Europe, which are just robotic hands. There is actually a good example, just to give you a scale of how fast these robots are implemented, and there's a large tech company from the US, large e-commerce player, without naming them, you know who I refer to. They have now 700,000 industrial robots across their warehouses and fulfillment centers. If my memory is correct, in 2013 they had 1,000. So that's in the last 10 years, they increased exponentially, and that's just one example. And yes, this is an innovator, leader in the space, but there's more coming. And now, obviously, with generative AI, the impact will be less on the shop floor and warehouses and more on the knowledge economy. But we definitely, and your question is very important for me, we definitely don't have to forget that automation technologies are disrupting work in the factory floor. And these are still people with jobs that we have to take care of and reskill and prepare for more meaningful jobs.
Yes, the same comment I would have had. We can continue bilaterally if you want. The AI and robotics marriage is an old one. With Gen AI, it changes a little bit, but we had the representatives of U Robotics here in the room 2 days ago, and they do believe that generative AI can give a boost to a next generation of innovation in robotics. Actually, just to give you an idea, you were mentioning basically connected devices and with actuators and sensors. The estimate as of the number of disconnected devices that we have today is around 10 billion at the moment. The estimate for roughly 11, 12 years from now, as I say, 2035 is 1 trillion connected devices, just to give you an idea of the scale of development. And this is also these swarms or individual agents. It's something that might further replace tasks. So we're actually going to have to meet again in this room, guys, perhaps in 6 months or in a month, because we're going to have to update this knowledge quite frequently, right? I'm going to let Sarah conclude. So I want to check if Max or Laura have additional comments.
Yeah, I wanted to share some comments on the AI and robotics one as well. Well, first of all, a lot of AI is already going into robotics, right? In order to have full automation, of course, it's more easily done when AI is embedded in a system that can interact with the physical world. If you think about quality inspection, for example, in industrial production, there's an AI that can analyze when products are passing by if they are default or low quality, and then the AI can make a decision, this is a bad product, but a robotic arm needs to push out the product from the assembly line, otherwise you cannot fully automate this task. At the same time, industrial robots are very heavily concentrated in Europe. Half of industrial robots are in Germany, and half of industrial robots are in manufacturing. So if you combine those, a quarter of all the industrial robots in Europe are in German manufacturing, which is only a few percentages of employment in Europe. So robots have actually are just the latest iteration in a very long process of automation in industries, in car manufacturing industry that is happening for 100 years. So there's already very little labor input going into these applications. So there's a paper by the JRC that makes this point that it's not so disruptive. It's basically the latest iteration in a long process of automation in these industries.
All right, Max.
Maybe very briefly on the international question that you have. Indeed, I think it's an important one. I personally think no, and we have to keep an eye on possible job losses across not only borders within Europe, but also beyond. I know this discussion a bit from the platform work file, and there where we distinguish between on location and online platform work. In the case of online work, you can, of course, easily perform the tasks from any place in Europe. So for that reason, the Commission, we are supporting very much also efforts at global level for a global governance and standard setting exercise on platform work will begin next May, I think, with the ILO in Geneva. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Max. Turn to Sarah. before we conclude, I have one joke for you. Okay, it's normal. Yeah, that's you. I have to punish you, every speaker, with one of my bad jokes, because I introduced you as thought leadership director, right? But then I saw that we introduced you as content development director. Have you changed job title during this conference, this event? Meaning, is it so fast? Exactly. So do you have final comments? And also, we would like to know where the Jobs Barometer goes, if you think this will have, important novelties going forward, or how you also have to adapt to what you measure to the pace of change.
Yes, absolutely. So our ambition is to do the AI Jobs Barometer again, and to focus even more on not just occupations that are exposed to AI, but to go one level down and to separate out exposed occupations that are likely to be complemented and augmented by AI. So those workers are even more productive than before, versus the exposed roles that are more likely to be displaced. So we're going to go to that next level of specificity and really dig into what's happening with those jobs, the numbers of jobs, the wages, the skills required, to get a really rich picture of the jobs market of the future. So some very brief concluding thoughts. So overall, our data suggests AI could be a very good thing for the European Union and for the world as a whole. That it could help to increase economic growth and raise living standards. There's no question there will be a tumultuous jobs transition, and we have to manage that and help people to adapt. But one caution about that, there's a fair bit of fear around AI sometimes, and when we feel fearful, our instinct is to slow down. But an argument could be made that the faster we go with AI, the more positive could be the outcomes for workers, because the faster we deploy it, the more rapidly we will create new industries, find new uses, birth entirely new ways of working. So it's much like with electricity. So I would want to leave you with a message of both change and opportunity, and I hope that it's a change that we embrace.
Thank you very much, Sarah. But what's the real job title eventually? Thought Leadership Director.
Or I use both. So
you use both. So you actually have to. Okay, and that's a form of insurance. It's a form of insurance. I want to leave you with a couple of thoughts before we give an applause to our co-panelists. First is the political outlook. That's for Max. We are about to see the formation of a coalition that will back the candidates, that will become new leaders of EU institutions. Things might be shaping in a way that the social dimension has to be considered alongside the green dimension, and so perhaps this sort of an industrial transformation with good jobs might become a priority for the next commission. It's just a pure speculation. That's from our from our vantage point here, because of the needs to have the different political forces backing von der Leyen, in particular in the European Parliament. So we'll see what happens there. This might create a new need for imagining what's going to happen to the creation of a sufficient number of good jobs in good sectors, and not in non-green sectors. So, and that makes it even more complicated, but perhaps more enticing for you, for sure, but also for all of us that we study the overall transformation of the economy towards prosperity. Now, the North Star will be very important there, because and I go back to when my first day when I was appointed in the high-level expert group on AI of the European Commission. And we use a term that now everybody uses, which is competitiveness. The European Commission asked me and my colleagues a question. Can you tell us how we can become more competitive in AI? And that's the first thought that I had, is the question is very important, right? Asking the right question. If I ask myself how Europe can become more competitive in AI, I give an answer in terms of industrial transformation, robotics, and so on and so forth. If I ask myself, how can AI help us achieve Sustainable Development Goal number 8, which includes full and decent employment for everybody, the answer to this policy question is completely different. So how do we incorporate AI at the workplace What kind of complementarity is an endogenous question, and it depends on our policy priorities. And so the role of Max and his colleagues, and also all of us in backing you, will be to give the directionality to this transformation in industry so that it ultimately leads to prosperity for Europeans and non-Europeans, and not necessarily only for prosperous AI machines surrounded by miserable humans, right? Which is not necessarily our ultimate policy goal. And I'm not saying the Jobs Barometer says this, of course. I want to thank you, Sarah, for presenting such an interesting piece of research, and thank all the panelists for providing comments, everybody who participated in the conversation. And see you soon, because this is a topic that we just launched a podcast on, we continue to do research on, and as Sarah said, and I very much hope so, you will continue doing research on and publishing interesting reports on. Thank you very much.